For the next question, Hibben Nasser with a shark.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. I want to ask the question again. Since October 7, you've been saying that Israel has the right to defend itself. And you've been stating all the time that they have the right to defend themselves against Hezbollah and Iranian proxies in the Middle East. So, my question, now you repeated how it does that matter. Can you clarify whether this Israeli approach to targeting Hezbollah's leadership falls under self-defense, and what's the U.S. administration clear position on the policy of targeted assassination? And if I may, please, one second question. You've emphasized for calm along the northern borders, and you have been working towards this goal for the past 11 months. Now, as we edge closer to a broader conflict, could you specify what do you mean by calm? Are you referring to a return to the pre-October 7 status quo, implying a cessation of hostilities, or the full implementation of Resolution 1701? Because it does matter for the Lebanese and for the Israeli to understand what are you proposing. And just one final question. We are 2 weeks away from October 7, Mr. Secretary. What could you have done differently that might have changed the current situation? Thank you.
I appreciate that you managed to get in several questions. So first, on the events of the last hours, we are still gathering information, making sure that we fully understand what happened, what the intent was, and until we have that information, I can't address in detail our response to it. So we'll continue to work on that in the hours ahead. With regard to a broader conflict, we've said very clearly, you're right, ever since October 7th, that one of our objectives, besides making sure that Israel does what it needs to do to make sure that October 7th never happens again, besides doing everything we can to try to make sure that people who are caught in this horrible crossfire of Hamas's making and who are suffering so terribly, women, men, children in Gaza, that they get the protection that they need and the assistance they need. Besides that, our objective has been to try to prevent the war from spreading as well as escalating. And on multiple occasions since October 7th, we seem to be on the verge of just that happening, including in the days immediately following October 7th, and then again on several other occasions, most notably in April, and even more recently than that. And each and every time, the combination of American deterrence and American diplomacy managed to prevent a wider war. We're intensely focused on doing exactly that now, along with many other countries, because in our judgment, in the judgment of so many others, it's in no one's interest to have a wider conflict. And so we're working in every possible way to prevent that from happening. Now, in terms of where we think this should go, no, going back simply to October 6th in terms of the border between Lebanon and Israel is not sufficient, because it's not simply a matter of having a ceasefire, that is, Hezbollah firing into Israel, Israel responding in a tit-for-tat. What's necessary is to create the conditions, including moving forces back, such that people in both northern Israel and southern Lebanon have the confidence to return home. It would be important, finally, to make 1701 real, not simply a piece of paper that's never been effectively implemented. And I remind as well that as part of Israel leaving Lebanon in 2000, after it had been bogged down there for 15 years, as part of that, and through 1701, the understanding was that any of the armed militia would put down their weapons. The state should have a monopoly on the use of force. Hezbollah never did that. And it's presented an ongoing threat to Israel ever since, again, with the avowed goal of eradicating it. So in this instance, the most important thing to do, again, if the objective is to just get people home, get kids back to school, in Israel and in Lebanon. Most important thing to do through diplomacy is to try first to stop firing in both directions, and then to use the time that we would have in such a ceasefire to see if we can reach a broader diplomatic agreement on this. I think it would have to proceed in phases, but we have to have conditions on the ground such that people know with confidence that they can be safe in their own homes. And finally, as we come to October 7th and the anniversary of that horror, our focus is not thinking about the past. Our focus is intensely on the here and now and the efforts that we continue to make to get a ceasefire that brings the hostages home, that results in a surge of humanitarian assistance to the people in Gaza who desperately need it, and that opens the prospects for enduring peace and stability. That's where our focus is. That's where it's going to remain.